install of the Reflection 337 RLS. Right now, I just arrived. We're going to go around. We're going to use the leveling system to take the weight off the suspension. We'll put our jacks in place. Okay, we're going to use the leveling system. So powered on. This one has electric legs. So we'll go to manual mode, press enter, and then you can keep it level. Get up there where you can see it as you go up, and we just want to take some of the weight off of the suspension. We don't have to take it all the way up. We just want to relieve some weight off the suspension. Let's go take a look. If you look right there on the equalizer, what we're looking for is for that just to take some weight off here on this, between the rubber and the equalizer crossbar. So let's see what we can do here. And we can make sure we keep it level. There we go. We'll call that good. Let's get the stands under it and the tires off. Okay, I want to show proper jack position. So get right underneath the leaf spring. And that's where, if you're going to use a bottle jack, that's where you want to jack from. If you were to be alongside the road and have a flat tire, I do recommend you put your leveling jacks down just to stabilize the trailer and take a little bit of weight off of the suspension, as we've already done. And then place your jack stand, since we've got most of the weight off of the trailer and we're just supporting the axles. Place it as close to the bottle jack as possible. And now we've just placed the weight of the axle on that stand, as you can see here. And that's appropriate. That's okay right there. We're not holding the whole weight of the trailer because it's on the jacks, the leveling jacks, and we have our jack stands just in case there was a failure in one of that components of the leveling system. All right, I'm going to do the next one. We'll get the tires off and I'll be back. Okay, we've got the jack stands on. We're up underneath it. Everything's up in the air. Everything's stabilized and secure. Okay, so things you're going to need to remove this: pair of channel locks. I like to use a multi-tool putty knife, hammer, pair of side cutters, and a 9/16 socket, preferably with an impact. All right, take your multi-tool, get in right behind the dust cap. This is how you want to remove these if you are doing a bearing service. We are not, so I could be brutal with it if I wanted to be and just knock it off there. We're not going to reuse any of this. Use your multi-tool to pop that clip off. Take the nut off, which you should be able to take off with your fingers. If it's tightened down excessively, somebody put this back together wrong. So I always put a cardboard down below to catch any brake dust that might fall out of this as well. So we'll wrap up those parts, put them up here out of the way. We're going to need the washer, the nut, and the retainer. Sometimes they use castle nut with a cotter pin. So put the cap back on to retain the old bearing in there, because we're not going to use that. Pull the drum off. Wipe off the excess grease so you don't rub your arm through it. Clean your hands. I know, most people are going to say you should have gloves on. Yeah, I know, it's pretty warm today and humid, and I would just be sweating profusely with gloves on, so that's why I don't have them on today. Okay, on these there's 5 nuts that we need to remove. I just throw them. I'm not going to reuse any of these parts since we're putting a disc brake conversion on. I just throw all those parts right in the back side of that hub with the old bearings. If this doesn't just pop right off like that, you can just tap it with a hammer and it'll come off. Hang that down out of the way. Now this is where the side cutters come in. We're going to cut the wire that goes through the axle. We're going to cut the wire that comes out of the belly. We don't need those anymore. And then on this one, there's usually a zip tie that was holding that stuff together to begin with. I cut that off as well. Knock out these studs. These are too short for our brackets that we're going to install for the calipers. Put all that right in the back side of the drum. And then you can use your paper towel or old rag, whatever, stuff inside there. That'll keep all that parts in there. Put this backer plate back into place. And now we have a nice, neat package to throw away. Okay, I just wanted to show you what we come across when I was taking one of the ones off on the other side. You can see the grease on the magnet. It's getting on the shoes. And that seal was failing. One of two things: it either wasn't installed properly, is why it's out a little bit, or they do occasionally work their way out. Don't know for sure, and it really doesn't matter. I've seen them all the way out, and seen them really slung full of grease. Another reason to switch over to disc brake: you can keep an eye on that seal on the back side, and it doesn't contaminate your brake pads on your disc brakes if it does let loose. Okay, this is what you're going to need: 9/16 socket and a torque wrench. We're going to torque those to 40 pounds. We're going to put blue Loctite on them. We need a 9/16 wrench. I use an impact just to snug them up. And then here's the blue Loctite. We're going to put on the end of the bolt, and that'll secure our caliper bracket, which we will install facing forward. And let me get set up and we'll do this. Okay, blue Loctite. I start with the top bolt. Get the nut started. These are a lock nut, so be sure you start them in the correct direction. Install the other bolts. The top one will hold it in place for you. That's why I start with the top one. Install the other ones. Get all the nuts started on those. You only need a couple turns. Okay. Fumble fingers it is today. All right. I like to start on the bottom back one. I don't know. That's just me. Snug it. And go in a crisscross pattern after that. Okay, now we're going to use the torque wrench, which we've got set to 40 pounds. Starting with the last one you just snugged up, the top one, and then go crisscross pattern again. All right, that's on. My last step that I do is every bolt that I do, I put a paint mark on it. Some people call it torque strike. It's just so that over time when you're doing your inspections, you can make sure that nothing's loose because the paint mark is still lined up. Let me see if I can get a shot to show you. There you go. All right, okay. Let's clean these up. Wipe everything off good. Make sure there's no grease or debris. Check that seal surface back here. Make sure that's nice and smooth. If you have any imperfections or rust or anything, which we're good on this one, just take some emery cloth, clean that up, and you'll be good. Okay, we're ready to install this rotor assembly. We've got our washer, our nut, and our retainer cleaned up. We've got our other items that we're going to need for that over here. And we've already prepped these. As you've seen in the video earlier, the seals are in place, the back bearing's greased. You can see the grease in there that's extra. So let's get into position and let's get started. All right, there we go. All right, so when you're installing these, just watch to make sure that you don't hit this seal on these threads or anything. So just line it up, carefully slide it back, push it into place. Now out here, you can see we're in place. We've got our bearings over here in a box, ready to go. So let's get one of those out, and you can see we've got that extra grease. We're going to place that right in the end and just shove it back into the race area. So now our race has grease on it, as you can see there. And we'll install the bearing, shove it back. Okay, so we're ready to install the washers. This customer has opted to go with a hub saver. And what this is is a washer that is a little bit bigger than the stock washer, as you can see here. And this prevents, especially in a drum brake application, if the outer bearing is to fail and you don't catch it and it disintegrates, in a drum brake situation, it will prevent that drum from being able to come off with the tire and go careening down the road. How often does that happen? Not too often, but when you consider the number of trailers that are traveling around the country, whether it's a recreational vehicle, a flatbed trailer, cargo trailer, you name it, it happens probably more than most people realize. So we're going to install that first, the hub saver. We're still going to use, if you have a keyed locking clip set up and not a cotter pin castle nut set up, we're still going to retain the original washer as well, because we need that flat spot to keep from any torsional movement being applied to the nut and retainer clip. So now let's get the nut in, and I'm going to show you the proper torquing and setting for these bearings. Okay, you're going to need an 1.5 inch socket and a torque wrench. Set your torque wrench to 50 foot-pounds. Let's clean up a little bit of this grease here. Okay. Now, as we start to tighten that down, we want to just spin the rotor and keep applying even pressure to the nut until it clicks. Spin it around a complete revolution. Do it again. One more time. And a third time. Now we're good. Now we want to loosen that up approximately a quarter of a turn. And we want to get it to where it's only finger tight. So we want to just touch that with our fingers up against the washer. Now we want to take our retainer clip, and I always squeeze these back in just a little bit, because on these retainer clips, they clip over the back of the nut, and this flat spot is lined up. So we line up that flat spot and we see where it's going to fall. And if you look, this one's going to land right where we set it. I don't know if you can see that. So let me get that clip put on. Remember, there's no pressure against that nut or pushing against that washer. It's only right there. That, for me, is a perfect set bearing. So now, once we've got that done, I do still like to mark them. So I'm going to put a little paint mark. That's my signature. Now we want to get the dust cap ready. I like to use a little bit of anaerobic sealant on this when I install these. And the reason for that is, over time, depending on the situation you're in, you'll generate heat. The oils can start to come out of the grease, and they'll start to leach past this dust cap. So when you take your tire off, you'll see like an oil buildup and whatnot around there. I try and prevent that. So I've got a piece of old pipe, and that's what I use to drive these on. So I'm not hammering on the outer edge. I'm putting all my force right here on this crimped lip. Get my hammer, line it up, make sure you're straight. You can hear it bottom out. So now that cap is on. And as you can see, sealed up and tight. So now this one's done. Okay, I want to add this in. So we've got these two done on this side. Before I move to the other side, whenever I'm underneath here and I'm doing any type of work or service work or whatever, I'm going to always grease any shackle points. And on a tandem axle, you're going to have 7 per side, as you can see there. Also, you want to check your U-bolt torque. For these 1/2-inch U-bolts, we're going to torque them to 90 pounds and make sure they're there. If it's a 9/16, 100 pounds is sufficient. Something to also look for is to make sure, there my phone did a flip, is make sure these springs are in line. If they happen to be fanned out and spread out, loosen these U-bolts a little bit, knock them back in line with your hammer, and then torque them back down. All right, so I'm gonna do that right now. I just wanted to point that out. My gimbal's being weird on me. So anyway. Okay, we've got the rotors all on and the bearings set to the proper position. Now we're going to install the caliper, and we already prepped these. Remember from the part 1 video. So line those up, get them started. I use a 13 millimeter or a 1/2-inch gear wrench just to run them down. And then we're going to torque those to 40 pounds. And like all our bolts, we're going to mark those as well with a paint marker. As you can see on the bleeder I talked about in part 1, these have dual bleeders. And that's so that if you mount this caliper on the left side or the right side, you always have a bleeder up. You're always going to bleed from the top anyway. These are brass, so be very careful with them. They don't take much to close them off. Just a light snug stops the fluid flow. And so righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. If you break them off, you're going to be looking for parts. And you'll have to get a new one, which isn't difficult, but I have never broke one, but I've been doing brakes pretty much all my life. I had an auto shop for 15 years. And you don't have to bear down on them. It's only brass. It'll close off and not leak easily. Okay, so that's torqued. Let me get around here where you can see, hopefully, where I mark them. So I just come on this bottom side right here, put a line out, put one on the bolt. Same with here. The reason I mark them on the bottom side is because that's easier to see if you crawl underneath. You can, when you're doing your inspections, when you're doing your greasing, you can check your bolts back here on your caliper bracket, and then you can check these as well. All right, I'm going to get the other 3 put on, and we're going to go mount the pump. Okay, just want to show you, we've got all the rotors and calipers on and mounted. You can even see through over there on the other side. So now we're going to go up and we're going to mount the pump. And I believe on this unit, we're going to go in here and we're going to mount it right back in there. I believe we have just enough room. So we'll remove the propane tank and we'll get started on that. A couple things to keep in mind. This gentleman has quite the lithium setup. He's going to be doing a solar upgrade eventually. So we're going to be using that box there for our power and ground for the pump. I've already fished out our brake wire. This is the original brake wire. It goes back to the electric brakes. We're going to use that because that's put away in a nice, clean, safe environment all the way up through the bulkhead, all the way up here, as you can see, up into that box there. And we'll fix this. This has been pulled out. We'll fix that today. We've got a couple wires we're going to switch up in here, but we don't have to fish anything because we're going to use this wire right here. Sometimes they're going to be a gray sheath on these smaller Grand Design reflections. A lot of times it is a red sheath, and there's a blue and a white wire inside of here. If you're not sure, you can always just take a utility knife and cut down on the sheathing and open it up and see what wires are in there. Some units do have a black sheath wire, albeit it's not Grand Designs. Theirs is mostly gray, but it does have some, they do have some red ones out there. So anyway, let's get ready. I'll get the bracket installed and the pump installed, and then we'll get some wiring done. And I'll show you that before I button it up. Okay, just wanted to show you, we've got the bracket in. We've already test fit it. I only drilled one hole to hold the mounting plate into position, set the pump on, put the cylinder back in just to make sure we had clearance, which we do, which I'll show you all that when we get her in place. I'm going to mount the pump right now, and I'll come back show you that. Okay, we've got the pump mounted. You can see I installed one of these brake line brackets. Put that through there. And then clip that on. I've already tightened the line. You don't have to go gonzo on it. You just want to snug it down good. Same with the screws that attach the pump to the bracket. There is a little tab on these that I just bent down to get it out of the way. Now I'll work on getting the wiring, and we're going to use this right here. We're going to run our wire right through here where the factory wiring comes through, and we'll get to wiring this up, and I'll show you the connections. Be right back. So I know we talked about wiring a bit ago. The original brake wire. So I pulled out the excess from the belly, and we're gonna feed that back through. And while we're doing that, we'll pull our ground wire and our power wires through with it when we pull that back out into the propane bay. If you need more wire than this, you can always go down to a little farther down in the belly, drop your coroplast, cut it off back there, and then pull it out so you won't have to splice anything onto this should you say want to mount your pump on the other side, or for whatever reason you need to put it in a different spot. I try and keep all my pumps as close to my battery power and ground as possible, along with my brake feed. So anyway, back at it. Okay, we've got our 3 wires that we need to pull back through, our ground and both of our power supplies. Purple again is for the breakaway circuit, the black is for the operating circuit, and the white is the ground for both. We're attached to our wire, our original brake wire that goes up to the pin box, goes through that wall. And if we take this off here, you can see it right here. So we're just going to pull that out. until we get our 3 wires. And there's our 3 wires, which we need for the pump. And then the red one is our sheathed wire, which has our brake circuit in it, and the original ground wire that we're going to convert to the breakaway circuit. And we'll make that switch up at the pin box for the breakaway switch. One side of this is always hot, the other is not. Currently that is attached to the blue wire that goes to the electric brakes. We're going to detach that and we're going to connect it to the ground wire on the brake cable that goes back there, which is now going to our pump, and that'll become our designated breakaway circuit. Back at it.